Hey, folks, welcome back to the Living in the Virtues of Your Strengths podcast. My name is Matt Ingold, certified Gallup CliftonStrengths coach and certified Catholic coach from Metanoia Catholic. And today we are focused on not only how to live the arranger strength well, but do it virtuously in ways that build up the kingdom of God. And that's what we explore on this podcast. How can we live our strengths virtuously in ways that are not only making a contribution to the team, but a contribution to the kingdom, building up treasures in heaven. All right. So we not only name, claim, and aim on this podcast, but we also tame. And that's really the main focus. I'm going to switch over to my presentation here, and we will get right into learning more about taming the arranger talent. Again, I remind everybody that's on the podcast that we've got a group of us here in the Metanoia Catholic Academy. You can go to CatholicCoaching.com and you can join us over there. We are helping people to live in their strengths virtuously and also be transformed by the renewing of their mind. All right. We are disruptors of mediocrity over at Metanoia Catholic. We invite you to come over and be a disruptor of mediocrity in your own life and the lives of others, the life of your parish, wherever it is. Go and bring the good news. And as I think it was Pope Francis said, make a mess of it. So how can this arranger? Well, arranger is not really a messy talent. It's more of an arranger. They bring some order to things. But we're going to be discussing here what the motivation is of arranger, where it can go virtuous, where it can go vicious, and then what are the mindsets that are behind it. So this is the marriage of the mindset coaching that we do at Metanoia Catholic. We believe that everything that we do, every action, virtuous or vicious, begins first as a thought that we assent to, then inclines us to feel an emotion, and that emotion inclines us to action. We talk about this all in our Metanoia Catholic Academy. You can learn about it in our Reason Cycle course as soon as you become a member there, and you get to join these calls here as well. All right, but today we're focused on that for arranger. We're going to give a little bit of a high-level baseball card view, I say, of arranger that we pull right from our flip book that we get at certification from Gallup. And so here's a high-level view of arranger. I am, what are they being? Who are they? I am comfortable with lots of moving parts. I will work effectively and efficiently through others. I bring, what's their contribution? Flexibility and interactivity. Interactive. I need, what's the need? A dynamic environment. So an environment that is changing, doesn't like static. I love initiating and managing necessary change. I hate resistance to necessary change. None of that in our church. The metaphor image that we see is a maestro or a coordinator, perhaps even a conductor. And that barrier label that they get slapped with a lot is difficult to follow because of frequent rearrangements. All right. So that's a high-level view of arranger. I'm gonna switch over to my word picture that we got. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this, but if you're just listening on the podcast, what do we got here? All right. The first one I got is of a man juggling. He's got 5 balls in the air, but not just 3, 5 balls in the air, because arrangers like to have a lot of things that they are juggling. They enjoy chaos. They like a dynamic environment. They don't like a stable environment because they really show up, at least their skills shine in chaos where everybody else is being overwhelmed by events. The person high arranger is conducting and coordinating. You think about all the pieces that are in a symphony. I also have a picture of a maestro with his orchestra conductor with his baton there. You think about all the different minds and voices and instruments that are involved in a symphony. It seems very chaotic, yet the maestro has a way of bringing it all into a beautiful opus. I've got my homegirl, Marie Kondo, on here, tidying up with Marie Kondo. I remember my friend telling me about this, and I'm like number 15 arranger, so it's still accessible for me, and I feel like it comes forward quite a bit. But I remember hearing about the show and being like, I'm going to nerd out over the show, and Aaron and I did for a bit, and yeah, it's awesome. She's just like she's an arranger, a professional arranger, and so she just shows up at your house. Your house is in chaos, and when she leaves, everything's in like nice little Tupperwares, and you can actually close your closets and close your cabinets, and everything has a place. I love everything having a place. Kind of a new mantra since we moved our house we moved to a new place. We kept our old place and we had it fully furnished. You know, whenever you move, anybody's ever moved before, like it's a season of purging, right? At least it's great when it is. Otherwise, it's just a season of moving things from one storage unit to another or one attic to another, and it never even comes out of the box. But the arranger in me is like, okay, we left all of that stuff up there. So all the hand-me-downs, all the hodgepodge was just kind of up there. And then down here, we got to get everything that we wanted. And it was actually very orchestrated, organized. And the mantra was, if there's no place for it in my house, there's no place for it in my life. No room for it in my house. There's no room for it in my life. And it's been like fighting to kind of maintain that, especially as grandparents love to buy toys, little tchotchkes. You go to a kid's birthday party and suddenly they get all these little goodie bags filled with all this crap. And then so now you got to find a place for it. And the kids are overwhelmed by it. But yes, tidying up with Marie Kondo, I think I beat that one to death. Okay. I got somebody shuffling the deck because that's what arrangers do. They are not afraid of taking the current plan and saying, you know what, we could probably arrange these cards, this situation, these people, this team, these dominoes to get a more efficient end or a more efficient arrival at being productive, more productive outcome. Let's just shuffle the deck. And everybody else is like, oh, you know, but that was the plan for the last 6 months. And it's like, it's okay. I got a better way, you know, move forward. Got an image of a guy that's looking at a dual monitor, and there's just lots of Excel and lots of data and lots of things that are there. Again, similar to the orchestra conductor, kind of hammering that point home. Again, I've got somebody that's doing some interior modeling, right? So I think of an interior decorator shifting furniture around in the house. My sister is high-end arranger, and it's not unusual to go over to her house and the furniture has been reconfigured. Even though she's like 7 months pregnant and her husband's a pilot and he's gone, this pregnant woman just finds a way to rearrange because that's what she does. That's who she is. And then finally, I've got the game of Tetris on here, because if you ever played Tetris, you know, it's all about arranging the pieces in an optimal way that doesn't leave any gaps in efficient ways. And you know, you're a arranger if you're packing the car for a road trip and you have the Tetris music that's playing in your head. And it's a game. Like, how can I get this thing so airtight that you can't even get a mouse fart squeaking its way through that? So on that note, arranger, what else can we add to this word picture now that I've got mouse fart on everybody's minds? What else can we add to arranger? Because we got some people on this call. Tiffany, you're number 3. I'd love to invite you on here. Jane, it's number 8 for you. Let's see some hands. What else could we put on here? Sean, it's high for you too. Number 3. All right, Jane, please come on. Come on down.
Well, I don't know if anybody's ever played this game, but when I thought of a ranger was a mahjong or even dominoes. You know, you're shuffling the tiles and then you've got to make them fit. And you know, the card shuffling is good, but I think it's more like poker. You know, trying to find the combinations. And I don't know whether that's just because strategic is right next to my arranger. And so I have a very difficult time to distinguish, is this a strategic or is this an arranging thing? They kind of go hand in hand for me. The thing I've discovered with strategic is the best path, whereas arranging is, like you said, is the resources, like the instruments are tasting, you know, the packing of the car, the things, the material things. That's how I see distinguishing between strategic and arranger. But yeah, some sort of game that there's multiple choices that you get to make, multiple ways to win.
And even strategic is, you know, it's strategic falls into that strategic thinking domain. And so it's more conceptualization and it's options moving forward that strategic is looking for. But like arranger is like where the rubber meets the road. We're actually moving physical things. We're moving resources. We're moving parts. We're rearranging them for an optimal outcome. So we can see how strategic can inform what arranger does. I can see this being a beautiful marriage showing up. I imagine, you know, Jane, you probably don't need the interior designer, because you can kind of see and then you can move and put the stuff in place. Or maybe I'm completely off base there. Okay, Tiffany, you got a hand up.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I'm also, number one is connectedness for me. So like Jane, sometimes I have a hard time, and I'm strategic's number 5.
Mm.
So I have a hard time differentiating between which one is which. I also don't necessarily relate well to the game. I'm not good at games. I don't for some reason it does not manifest itself that way for me. However, the one thought that came to my mind is I drive my son absolutely insane. Like you said, your sister moves furniture. I'm not as big at moving furniture. Maybe by now I've lived in my house for quite a long time. I kind of have it the way it works optimally for our usage. But in the kitchen, if he cooks a lot too, so sometimes we cook about the same amount in a week, or we cook at home a lot. I drive him insane because I'm always moving the utensils and things around, because if I haven't found the
Oh,
perfect spot where it's most efficiently used, I will change it, and then he can't find it. It's like,
oh,
Mom, you did it
it's
again.
it's
I think
triggering.
that's a ranger for me.
Yes, it's triggering, Tiffany. Like if you see me in the kitchen, it's like I'm dancing because I know where everything is. I'm like, I can like Ray Charles, I can like have my eyes closed and I'm just moving
Yes.
around. And as soon as like say I've got like one of my in-laws or something like comes and stays with us for a little bit and they put something back and they're trying to be very helpful, but all of a sudden it's just like, this doesn't go over here. This spoon goes right here in this tray and everything like that. And so, yeah, it's that optimal efficiency that you're going for.
Yeah. So I can drive myself a little crazy with that too, but that's one of the things. He is just like, Mom, you're doing it again. Where is, the spatula or the ladle? Like, for crying out loud, we need the ladle.
And maybe
So,
you have like your ranger sees the ladle or whatever it is being most optimally used over here. And if he's higher ranger, maybe he's got like a different production outcome in mind. And that's why it makes more sense over here. But
yeah.
that a ranger needs to have that production outcome, that shared production outcome in mind in order to really settle on what is that optimal arrangement of things. Awesome. Tiffany, thank you very much. I see Corey put in here a travel tip or trip coordinator. And the first person that comes to mind when you say that is Hannah. Hannah is on our team, but she actually does travel coordination as well. And so she's number 4 arranger, and she's awesome at that stuff. So she's one of her tasks that we've got is like putting together like when we're going to have this Metanoia Catholic in-person event. Wink, wink. I know we keep talking about it. Let's get it arranged on the calendar, but Hannah is like the perfect person on the team because she loves shuffling all those things around. Harriet, what did you add to this picture?
Hello. Yes, I was thinking, and I'm not sure how to put it in the picture, but I don't see people. So I'm thinking of a family group of people, because my ranger is high with relationships. So I've got all those. And it's helping people be together, arranging either children. I did daycare for many years. So arranging people with their strengths, their gifts, how they work together rather than a computer screen or a game. That's what I was thinking about.
Okay. So seeing people as resources. And Harry, are you high individualization as well?
Yes, number 6. And I've got learner and input and all the developers and personalities and connectedness. Everything is blue and green.
Right. So you can, I imagine like when you see people, it's like not in this like objectification sort of way of like, this is your talent. So you go over here, you're cog in this machine, but like, this is where you shine. This is where you light up. This is what you enjoy doing. This is where you come alive. I want to put people in that position that allows them to come alive. And
the best thing for them, not to make everyone do exactly the same thing. They can all be arranged like you would have the picture of the conductor. Each one is a different instrument. Each one is different, but it's with people rather than a screen on a computer.
Sure. That's interesting. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful hearing it that way. Sean, thank you, Harriet. Sean, what do you got?
I'm number 3 in arranger, and looking at your pictures, I agree with Harriet. I would want to see more group people, but as you were talking to her, I looked and I am 4 in individualization and 1 in connectedness, and then 5 in strategic and 2 in ideation. Anyway, that's my number 5. But so I resonate with some of the other ladies who've already spoken. In the higher numbers, I'm in there same thing, which is interesting. I love the composer or the conductor. And one of the reasons I also identify with that is that that conductor understands the people and the music.
Mm.
And so he, you know what I mean? That bringing that all together is just, it is, I love that. That's exciting to me. And I identify with the balls in the air, or I used to think of spinning plates. That's what my analogy over the years for myself. And then I'm with Jane on Mahjong. Now Mahjong, I love it and it calms me. I love Mahjong. And I think it's because it's the artistic, and then the it's like a the quest, you know, to find the pieces that match. And then I watch it with music. And so then the music, you know, anyway, that was a fun discovery. So anyway, and then when I was looking at my notes, one of the things that I can say is that I do have a tendency when I walk in a room or in a situation, I want to know who's who in the zoo. I want to know who's the decision maker, who's, you know, who can get things done and who can't get things done. And then, yeah. And how will we all work together? So that comes to mind as soon as I saw this and you prompted me to look at the notes. So
sure. So who's who in the room? Who's who in the zoo?
Yes.
And then how, like, and what's everybody's role? How are we all going to work together? And so, like, job titles, job descriptions are important things. Resumes are important for you.
And who has the keys? Who can actually flip the switch?
Yep. Who's a decision maker?
Sometimes it's not the lead person or the titled person. It may be the gatekeeper. And so that I always find intriguing. And so anyway.
So what are you arranging? Like, what are the resources that you are arranging based, like, you use that information, who's who in the zoo, so that I can allocate what resources, how, in what way?
Well, if you're on a trip, you want to know, you know, who's really managing the timing, the schedule, the food, that kind of thing. If it's a healthcare environment, I was a caregiver for a long time. So I had a lot of situations where I walked into a new room that I needed to find out who could actually make things happen or who's going to trip us up.
Got it.
And so that I found that happening a lot, and I didn't realize it until I took strengths. When I took the strengths thing, I thought, oh, no wonder I'm not just controlling. You know, I had the responsibility of being a ranger, and or I was using my ranger skills that came up. But anyway, so that's interesting,
Sean. That's interesting how not only is your ranger showing up in terms of, like, who are the optimal pieces that can make a contribution here, but also who are the people that could dismantle this operation.
Oh yeah.
You know, and just, like, you know, the Mr. Magoo's out there that could totally just destroy this thing.
Right. Or they're going to
let's move them over here.
Yeah, they're going to stonewall you. So and so you just, like, and that's where I'll come up with, and then I'll step aside. What you were talking about is having that capacity to rearrange. Because then it's like, okay, plan B, okay, plan C, okay. And it does get confusing for others, but in that high level, when you're in that zone, you just go, okay, well, we can't pretend not to know this.
Yeah. And you want to, and it's the rearrangement is serving a tangible outcome. Remember, it's an executor skill. And so executor skills or domain wants to rest in some sort of a tangible production at the end of it, some tangible outcome. And so, like, yes, getting something done, the production aspect of it, in this case, whether it's moving a deal along, getting a process put in place, it's having that end in mind, or making, you know, something in the kitchen, like we were talking about before, Tiffany. Like, there's a tangible outcome that we're going for. Gina, I see your hands up.
Hey, yeah, I was just thinking, and I had a couple that I threw out in the chat, but because like first I was thinking like a Rolodex or like just putting that puzzle together, but then the one that really jumped out at me, and it's the first one that jumped out at me whenever you actually introduced this topic, was in my brain, and I'm number 15, so I'm like, well, why would this affect me that much? But in my brain, I'm always thinking of the most efficient way to get everywhere. So it's like a little GPS in my brain. And if we're
Mm-hmm.
going on a trip, I know we're going to stop here and stop here and stop here. And I'm sure it drives my husband crazy because I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to stop for gas, then stop at this place, not this place, because you don't want to have to make that U-turn and get on the other side of the road. You want to stop at the one that's on the way to the interstate so you can stop there. And so anytime I go to exit or look for that stuff, it's just got to be efficient. I'm not saying, waste the extra 5 cents, but it's just the efficiency of it. And it's so funny because that's very, very strong in me, but I don't know if it has something to do with some of my other top strengths or not, because with me being a 15 though.
Well, first of all these things are accessible to us, and 15 is not low. Like 15 is, and some people would say that you're still kind of in your dominance when you're at 15. Gallup will say textbook, they stick with your top 10. But I know there's some schools, Michelle Dunn is she'll say 15, certainly accessible. And even like the way that the assessment works, you guys, like you can take this and all of a sudden your 15 can become a 9. So there's there is some fluidity that you have in this. So it's not like hard and fast. But yeah, it's even you read into the report, which if you ever want to read into the report behind all their studies and everything like that with Gallup, it's like, oh my goodness gracious. But yeah, it's not like a 100%. It's never going to change. So
Yeah,
there's a
that was
little bit of
just so
fluidity there.
interesting because I just didn't expect it. But you had asked them about individualization, so that's a 2 for me. But then I do know responsibility is a 4, and so I do take responsibility probably for more than I need to. And it connects with that, I think, too.
Yeah, certainly could. No, I think you said the GPS, and I think the GPS that's always going recalculating. What's it recalculating? The most efficient way to get there. And that's that really speaks to what the arranger is doing. They're just constantly recalculating the most efficient way to get something done. Okay. On that note, here's my stab at it. All right. So we talk about stewardship often, especially in Christian circles here. But I see this being the motivation of arranger, the best stewardship of resources to get something done. All right. It's not just best stewardship of resources for the sake of stewarding resources, but to get something done. There is a tangible outcome that you're seeking at the end of it. And saying resources could be people, could be talents, could be money, it could be time, could be gas, the route that you're going to take, Gina, you're saying, where the spatula is put, like it's the best use of resources in order to get something done. But yeah, I thought it was interesting, the way, Harriet, you brought up how you look at resources more so not so much as stuff like a hammer and nails and things like that, but people are really resources for you. And perhaps the tangible outcome that you're looking to arrive at is, a great dinner party or evening with the family or something like that, where there's something that's accomplished at the end of the way that you even seating arrangements at a table. I've seen people, get bogged down over who's going to be sitting next to who and what kind of conversations might they be having and which one is, left leaning and which one's right leaning in terms of politics. Let's put them on opposite ends. Let's put them on opposite ends of the banquet hall. In fact, but just best stewardship for resources to get something done. Any other thoughts on this? Sean, how's this landing for you?
Excellent. And the one other picture I just thought of, Matt, is a football coach, on the chalkboard. And
oh, fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And they, because I'll tell you, those guys, I have family members who are coaches, and they know, they're stewards of their players. They know their players. Yes. They know physiology. They know their mental and emotional stamina. And they know that they study the teams. And so when that chalkboard with all the X's and O's, and that would be, to me, an example of an arranger.
Yes. It throws me back to, I'm going to throw a reference out here. I don't know how many. I often have very obscure movie references, but Mighty Ducks 2, Okay. I think you bring Mighty Ducks 2. All right. And it's where they go to the Junior Olympics, and Julie the Cat Gaffney is she's the goaltender. She's been sitting on the bench the whole entire tournament and everything. And Goldberg's just been slaying it in the net. And finally it comes to like the shootout at the very end. And what do you see? You see the coach leaning next to Julia Cat. It's like, this is her time because she's got the fast glove. And he's like, knew that like the way that this guy came in, he just knew his players exactly like that. And he puts her in the net and they lost, it stunk, but no, they won. She got it. It was fun in a very Disney sort of hockey sort of way. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Anything else on this? Going once, going twice? All right, let's jump over to our scripture reference. So we always look to scriptures as we start to pivot away from just what the motivations are. That's really what drives us. How do we live this more virtuously? So we looked at the scriptures, and I pulled this one actually from Living in the Living in Your Strengths Catholic edition. It's a great book that you can get on this. But they have a lot of scripture reference that are paired up with the themes. This was one of them. So we're reading Psalm 8, verse 5 through 7. And it reads this: "What are humans that you are mindful of them, mere mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them little less than a god, crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them rule over their works of your hands and put all things at their feet." All right, that's Psalm 8, 5 through 7. How can we look at this? How's this striking everybody? How can we look at this and see how a ranger is called to steward well the resources that God has given to them? Each one of us are called to steward that well. Jane.
The last sentence, "You have given them rule over their works of their hands," is the resources to me. And what the image brings is, even the farmer who's got to decide which field is going to be planting the wheat and where are the cows going to be and when do we shear the sheep. Or it could be a mother who's got to arrange the children, who's going to take a nap and when are we going to make the dinner. It could be the dad who is at work arranging the projects, figuring out which is priority. So it to me it goes back to that stewardship that you used in the motivation was really key. And the first part, just like to me, it's like, yeah, what are humans that that we're more mortals that you care for them? Like it's sometimes you've given us this awesome responsibility to take care of your creation, and yet, like, who are we? Like, who am I, Lord, that the mother of my Lord should come unto me? Like, who am I? This humility, it's a humility, and yet it's a responsibility. It's humility and magnanimity, right? That we have this magnanimous work to do with our arranger so that we can care for what we've been given. But the stewardship of like, am I really honored, Lord? Like you've crowned me little less than a god. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it kind of gives a little bit of weight to it once you start to say you have made them little less than a god. It's like, okay, if ruling all of these things has made us little less than a god, maybe we ought to step into that dignity, really step into that inheritance and step into that honor. And then when we do that, we'll find the motivation to really steward these things well, out of a desire to just be a good steward, not something that we have to do. And again, correcting a typo in here, I've written in, you've given them rule over their works of your hands. It's supposed to just be the works of your hands. Okay. You've given them rule over the works of your hands. So God has given us something that is his works, and put things all things at our feet. Tiffany.
Yeah, that's the middle one. Yet you have made them little less than a god, crown them with glory and honor. That brings back what Sean and Harriet were saying about people. I think that's why I didn't really relate it to games as much, and why I love like the strengths and the temperaments tests and stuff. So putting people that for their glory and honor, and perhaps moving people, like if they have a weakness in a certain spot, putting them where their strengths are. So helping with those types of things, seeing where the gifts are and helping place people where they will work most optimally to honor that.
Yes. Yes. It puts a responsibility on us to know the works of God's hands and to know the people, kind of like Sean, how you're saying about the coach knows his players so well, knows their players so well, that they can call upon them in those times where they know that they are going to thrive. The conditions are set for them to really show up as their best self and make their greatest contribution. But even the responsibility on us to understand the goodness of all created goods, not just people and all of their talents, but all created goods, and know what a piece of chocolate cake is for, right? It's for delighting and celebration. It tastes delicious. You know, if you're a chocolate fan out there, if not, insert whatever your favorite dessert is. But and there's a proper use of the chocolate cake. But if we eat the entire chocolate cake, arguably we're not using it properly, we're not stewarding it well. We're abusing them. So we can see, you know, it even harkens to mind that the parable of the steward, that's one's the abusive steward, and one's the good steward, right? That also comes to mind, the importance of stewardship here. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if I could add, setting
Please.
people up for success, I think, and situations, and not placing people in a spot where you know that it's going to fail for them, I guess, for lack, I can't think of a better way to say it, but why would you put somebody in a situation if you knew ahead of time they probably weren't going to do well? You don't want to do that to somebody. You want to put them where they're going to be a success.
I could see that. I mean, how does that land with the other arrangers, like on in the group here? Especially, I don't know if that's a ranger that is across the board, if that's a ranger with the relationship themes that are close by, that kind of look at it that way. But setting up people for success, setting the conditions for other people to thrive and be successful. Jane, you got a hand up.
Yeah, I used to have a boss that was high in ranger, and she would make me crazy because she would come in the evenings after hours and rearrange our office physically. And you asked about the home decorate. That is not my forte, but arranging people. And one of the things, her mantra was, we've got to find the right seat. And I think that's what Tiffany's saying, is like finding the right seat for each person so that they can thrive, the cooperative plane rather than the competitive plane. And I think that's one of the things that we, at least I can speak for myself, and it sounds like everyone here resonates so well with the strengths, in the fact that we all, at this moment, all of us have a ranger kind of high, but how we use it, because we're so individual and unique, the seat that we need. And like you said, it with Hannah, right? Like Hannah's in this perfect spot in your company because of the gifts that she has. So putting people in the right seat. And so sometimes you have to arrange them like, oh, no, so and so. So you use the analogy of the wedding, you know, the banquet of don't sit so and so here, but just the opposite. What Tiffany's saying is like, oh no, we have to put so and so next to, because that's going to be a beautiful contribution, and think about how they're going to you know, add to the whole place. So I think that's a great way of acknowledging people, as well as physical resources or things.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right, folks, thank you so much. Let's jump into our virtue conversation. So whenever we look at the virtues, we always look at how do we live out a ranger in this case in a way that leads to interdependence, and then that vicious side, where might it go? Independent, dependent, or codependent. All right. So it's always in the context of relationship, and that's this strengths, right? It's all about where you fit on a team, right? It's not just living these things individually. And that's actually very Christian, right? We're the body of Christ. We're never meant to be operating by ourselves. Man was not meant to be alone. And so how do we lean on one another? Okay. So leading to interdependence, the virtuous side, a ranger goes interdependent when it sees people as resources to steward and stewards to their own resources. All right. So not only do I look at the members of my team as as resources that I have to steward to serve the overall mission. But I also honor that they have other things that they are stewarding as well. And so there's talents that they have, there are other obligations that they have, there are things that that are part of that, like they're willing participants. It's not just somebody, it's not just a thing, that a chess piece that I'm moving around on the board, but it's a person with a will that has other things going on in their life. And so that's where I see how a ranger can show up virtuously when they recognize people certainly as resources, or things as people as resources, but then they also see them as stewards of their own resources. I think one of the things that a ranger can do as well, where it can go vicious, is when it starts micromanaging. And so it wants to arrange not just your pieces, but so-and-so's pieces over here and so-and-so's pieces over here. It's like, no, 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 no. Those are their pieces to steward. All right. Get your ranger hands off them. And so it's like, how can we set the conditions for them to be good stewards of their resources? You know, I think of a leadership hierarchy. That's a learning process that I'm going through. In fact, right before the call, the reason why I was a little bit late today is because Abby on our team was coaching me on this transition, because I needed it. What do you guys think on the virtuous side? Is there something that we could add? Is this hitting the mark here in terms of living a ranger virtuously? Gina, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Hey, whenever Jane was talking and then hearing you explain that and everything, and I'm not going to say it right because I can't remember the exact, and I think there's something in the Bible, but there's also something that I've learned in the past, and it just kind of stuck with me. It's not taking the seat at the head table, right? At the head of the table, it's moving to the side and letting those, that company or that person you invite sit at the head of the table, you know, and they're being able to bring that gift forward. And then just in the experience in the past, you know, that was just always a beautiful image in my head. And in helping to start a nonprofit, you know, and things like that, where I've worked with a whole bunch of other, you know, mamas pretty much, and one dad that was there. It was just really looking at the different gifts that we had to bring to the table and learning how to see how they can best be used and served. But again, it's still that table place. It's that, you know, you typically going to have somebody in leadership, but it's also that person knowing when they need to step aside or move over, or be able to possibly put two chairs at the head if you're working as a team, but really, really valuing what each person brings. And I'm good at that in community. I would say sometimes I'm good at it in my family sometimes, but I would say sometimes that micromanaging jumps in a little bit more in my household. And that would be the area I think to grow and have that awareness to make it more virtuous, you know, it's more similar to how I can do it with other people. So
yeah, I think we've got some lopsided relationship themes that are up front on this call today, and so you're getting in we're all giving that's great, Gina. And I hear the humility side of what you're talking about with the seat at the table, foregoing that, and the humility of stepping back and creating space for somebody else to come in and steward their gifts well and bring what they have to the table. But I don't want I at the same time want to caution us. This isn't a response to you. This is a thought that I'm having, Gina. That it's not just arranging people. Ultimately, it's arranging any sort of resources here. So in the same way here, even in my definition, is like they see people as resources to steward and steward them to their own stewards and also stewards of their own resources. You could also say like they have a knowledge of how to use their resources well, what the limits of their resources are, the proper way to use them, ways that you can abuse them, way that they're often like you want to make sure that you're using. Like you're not a good steward if you are, you know, throwing sugar in the gas tank, right? It's not, you're abusing the automobile at that point. So you need to know the resources, know their capabilities and limitations, or at least have somebody that does have the right expertise that you can call and you can get your good counsel. And so you know how to allocate and use those things properly. Sean, I see a hand up.
Yeah, real quick, I would say on the virtuous side, what would lead into that resources to steward and stewards to their own resources, where mentorship would be a beautiful aspect of this, where you train, you're working together to train somebody else to use that tool or that software or that skill set. And that is kind of leads into what Tiffany said, is helping to set somebody up for success. And in that stewardship is that generosity of training the stewards that are coming up. And where the mentorship. So I would see that as a virtuous side of being a good steward.
I see it. Yes. Yep. Not only giving you the skill, like you have to have the knowledge of the capabilities of the resource and the limitations in order to be a good steward of it. Got it. Did I sum that up well, Sean?
Yes. And also the generosity of spirit to share what you know.
Got it.
And so you're not just hoarding it, you're that good steward. And again, I thought about the scripture that really was a beautiful scripture, but it is what he has made. The Lord has made this and has brought us into being stewards of what so it's humble and also edifying. So
humble and edifying. Yeah.
So,
Got it. Okay. Awesome on the contributions on the virtuous side. Let's go vicious with the ranger. Okay. So leading to independence. All right. Going off by yourself. I put efficiency over people. And so again, this is like where you can start to look at other people as just cogs in the machine. We don't necessarily consider people. And we just are constantly shuffling the deck to arrive at that more efficient place without any sort of consideration to the disruption that you can cause to the rest of the team by shuffling that deck again and again and again. Okay. So that might be a way that leads independent. So it's something, and whenever we're going independent, we're going in a way that's just indulgent and inconsiderate of other people's, other people's needs, their wills, their other people. Leading to dependence. I need others to do it my way and believe that it is the best way to feel good. So we go in that dependent relationship. That's often when we're looking for somebody else to do something so that we can feel a certain way about ourselves. So we're depending on somebody to think, feel, or act a certain way so we can think or feel a certain way about ourselves. Okay. And then finally, that codependence. A ranger does all the thinking and doing, and the team does just what they're told. So again, that codependent relationship is where it's very shallow. Nobody's really being seen. Nobody's being asked to grow in virtue at all. They're going along to get along, but there's no sharpening that's taking place. It's just a very dull, tit for tat, utilitarian exchange that's taking place, and people allow it because nobody wants to really feel the stress of having to change. Okay. So I see a ranger going in there, micromanaging things that are going on, and other people just stepping out of the way for a ranger to go in there and do it and be like, okay, that's fine. Anything else on the vicious side here, folks? Any examples from your own life? We got vicious rangers on this call too, and virtuous rangers. Is there any even stories that you can share? Tiffany, I see your hand up. How humble.
I have a story. The leads to independent side. I put efficiency over people. So connectedness is my number one. So that is a people strength, but the rest of mine, I think, are execution. So I'm highest in execution, then strategy. So especially as a mom, I think that's like our closest relationships. I can see myself planning for things, trying to put all the pieces together, and doctor's appointments and work and school and extracurriculars, and Easter's coming. So and then all of a sudden, like looking at my kids, and they're just like, hello, mom, like we're here, can you, like, I need you. I don't need all those other things to be done. And then I have to stop and be like, okay, like I'm over planning, I'm over executing, and I need to be present for the people in my life. So yeah.
Awesome. No, thank you, Tiffany, for sharing that. Yeah, you can see how we can just be really heavy in some of those strengths sometimes. And then next thing you know, we're neglecting the connectedness. That is also just super important for us. And we hit those little trigger moments and, hey, mom, and next thing you know, you're just leaning back into that connectedness a little bit more. Thanks for sharing, Tiffany. Awesome. Anything else, folks? Yeah, Jane wrote in here, I'm thinking of how God arranged the Israelites in the desert and how they moved with different tribes. Yes, I can see certainly arranged, setting them apart You will be a people set apart. Yes, Harriet, you got the hand up. Oh, mute. There we
Thank
go.
you. Yes, I was just saying that one of the things I was reading about in this was the flexibility of the arranger, and how in my life of caregiving, the plans change all the time. And as she was talking about being a mom, that's true too, but also being a caregiver to someone who likes things very consistent. We don't like things to change, but they do. And you have to be on your feet to quickly change things, think about what is best for everyone, and make those connections so that everything can go smoothly. Because I can make decisions, but an arranger can also be flexible enough to see the consequences of those decisions as they move forward into the next step and the next step and the next step. So that was why I was saying I liked that part about flexibility, because sometimes they just occur to you. You don't get to plan anything flexible. And so you have to be ready to, and in metanoia, you can be ready to take that moment between the thought and your emotion. So as an arranger, you don't just run off, change things. You have that moment and that space where if you have time to journal, that's great, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes, but with this training, you can do that. You can take a moment and then see where things go and change things to make things good for everyone involved.
Harriet, I love the way that you're bringing up how just taking that tactical pause and just say, okay, do we really need to shuffle the deck right now? I mean, can we use this as a time for stability, in the way that you consider, your husband, who I believe you're talking about here, enjoys things to be consistent, right? Or the person that in your life that enjoys the consistency. How do we maintain, how do we shuffle here and be considerate of their emotions? Not that we can, I'm not saying you're saying this either. Like another way that I think a ranger can go dependent, right, is when it's in a way of emotional immaturity, right? Where we think that we can manage other people's emotions by structuring the situation a certain way, and it becomes manipulative at that point, right? Versus allowing people's emotions to be whatever they are, but just allowing you to be doing, certainly not inconsiderate. We want to be considerate of other people, but not necessarily have our actions dictated by what emotions they might have, or kind of. But at the same time, there's a balance between that. It's not that we just say, screw you, you figure it out. Your emotions are yours. We can be our brother's keeper here as well. Jane.
Yeah, what Harriet was saying about the flexibility brought me to the codependence. My sister's been staying with me, and she lives with her daughter, and my sister has a brain injury, so her thought process and things. And one of the things we were talking about, one of the conscious choices my intention is always to make, is to present her with options and let her choose the option that best fits. Whereas many times, because my niece she's got 8 kids, so she kind of like leads from independence to codependence, and she makes the decision on the fly, on the turn. And then my poor sister's all confused, because she's like, wait, I thought we were doing this, and now you're telling me to do this. And her lag time is just, it's just a long lag time. And so one of the things I've learned with her is like, here are the options that I want to give you. Here's the arranged things. Any of them are very, viable. You tell me how you want us to lead, and then also allowing that lag time. And sometimes with, my niece, has had her living with them for a long time, and sometimes you don't have the lag time as with a baby, or you got to get the kids to school or something. So it's a difficult way to juggle. But Harriet said it's so great that the gift of a ranger is the ability to be flexible or allow others to be flexible, create that space for flexibility where others may not have that gift of, no, I got to do it this way, I got to do this way. So the vicious side, I put efficiency over people. No, I got to get it done. But then if you do the virtuous side of, no, I'm going to relax, create the space for the flexibility and others come in. So that's just something that the thinking of the two thoughts, virtuous.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing with you, Jane, and with what Harriet said is like, you're arranging the circumstances as best you can for the people that are involved to show up as their best selves. It's like what we talk about in temperaments, where you're creating, we all have our ideal conditions that we prefer to have around us all the time. And I can see where your arrangers and those relationship themes that are surrounding it leans into arranging the circumstances to meet those ideal conditions for those people in your life. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. So when we looked at the virtuous mindsets, thanks, ladies, as we looked at the virtuous mindsets, I always like to lean in with a question here. So how can I show and empower others to steward well what is theirs? So I think it's certainly like, how can I empower myself, or how can I, either through knowledge or good counsel, or through taking some time to pause, pray, do those tactical pauses that we're talking about, to steward well what is ours, but also empower others to steward well what is theirs. So it's the overall goal here is efficient stewardship to achieve some sort of tangible outcome. And then the vicious mindsets could be independence, do it this way. Dependence, do it this way and like it and tell me you like it. Or finally, isn't this way so much better? Yeah, sure. This is better. Let's just keep moving forward. Okay. Anything else here, folks, as we wrap up for the arranger call? Thank you so much, everybody, for contributing. This is a great call. And Harriet, so I loved having you on the call here. I know you're on these calls all the time, but just hearing you share, this is one that you could tell. You definitely see where it is in your life, and you can claim it. And that's what these calls are about here, folks. It's not only naming these strengths that we have, these talents that God has given to us, and claiming them, seeing where they're showing up in our lives, but also like, how can we tame these things? How can we make sure that they're inclining us to do virtuous things and live out virtuously, and really be building up the kingdom of God, because that's where they just naturally show up as gift, self-gift. And there we have John Paul II's personalism that we stand on for this podcast. We move from this place of self-awareness. What are my gifts? Name them, claim them, self-possession, certainly the claim them and tame them. And then ultimately that self-donation, that self-gift, where we are aiming them in kingdom building capacities. So it's a ranger. Next week, I don't know. You'll have to see what comes out next week. And we'll jump into it. But I think this is like episode 20 or something, or like the 20th theme or something like that. Well, we're making our way through these 34 themes, and we'll see what we do when we get to the end of them. But this has been fantastic, folks. Again, if you want to join us, if you're just listening, join us in the Metanoia Catholic Academy. Go to CatholicCoaching.com. You can learn about all the things that we do over there at Metanoia Catholic. We train and coach other Catholic coaches. We have our certification program. If you want to be a certified Catholic coach, goodness gracious, we need them. Want to know what that is? Go to CatholicCoaching.com. We'll talk to you about it. And blessings to everybody. Go live in the virtue of your strengths.